What is up, fellow movers? Welcome back to the channel. Today we will be talking about the Hollowback. The Hollowback is definitely one of the coolest looking handstand shapes out there, but it is also perhaps the shape that is most different from the others and requires the most immense amount of mobility and strength, especially related to shoulder and spinal mobility and strength. I use the Hollowback all the time for different variations and combinations and sequences, and it is definitely a smooth looking and impressive skill. A Hollowback tutorial has been hugely requested by you guys, so here you have it. The Hollowback can be performed in two different ways. You have the b-boy variation or breakdance variation, where you are bending your elbows, flaring elbows out, or internally rotating your shoulders and sticking your head out looking up in the roof. Or it can be done in the gymnastic or hand balancers way, where it's also known as a Mexican handstand, where you have straight arms, you emphasize the opening of the thoracic spine more, and you look in between your hands and in the floor. While I don't want to stand here and say which one of these is correct, I can tell you as much as this. First one is definitely more prone to injury, and you're in a much less stable shoulder position, so the risk of injury is much higher. This is the main reason why I want to focus on the second one, or the hand balancers way of doing it. I started out with the first way of doing it myself, but I learned by experience that the hand balancers way of doing it is a much safer way of approaching it, and it's also much easier to control and to use in combinations and in sequences when performed this way, because you are much more in control and your head is positioned where it should be to the shape that you are transitioning to as well. It may take a bit longer because it requires much more thoracic mobility than the breakdancers or b-boy variation, where you emphasize shoulder flexion to a much bigger extent, and you also use the bending of elbows and inward rotation of shoulders to get your body lower and making it easier to flex your shoulders. But I think it will be worth it in the long run, especially if you want to keep injury-free and want this skill to be as useful as possible. Now, do let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on this topic, because I would be very interested to know. So to sum this up, when doing any of the variations or progression that I'm introducing today, we are emphasizing elevation of shoulder, pushing our shoulders into the ground or pushing our hands into the ground. We are focusing on opening up the thoracic spine, and we are always looking in between our hands and not up in the roof. First things first, here are the prerequisites that I recommend when approaching the Hollowback. So prerequisite number one, handstand. You obviously need a stable handstand before trying to do a Hollowback, because in a Hollowback you will be in a very stressed position and a very tense position. It will be difficult to breathe because you're squeezing your lungs as you're bending your thoracic spine, and thus it is important that your handstand is already very stable and that you are not struggling with balancing the handstand. So I recommend having at least a stable 30-second handstand and being able to control your shoulder position in a handstand. So basically being able to shrug like this in a handstand position. The second prerequisite is thoracic mobility. Now, we obviously need a great amount of thoracic mobility as well as shoulder mobility, but I think the shoulder mobility here is given from the fact that you should be able to have a pretty nice handstand before starting to approach this move. And when we are working on our thoracic mobility related to this skill, we will also get better shoulder mobility in the same drills that we use. So as of the prerequisite, I would recommend that you have a pretty comfortable thoracic bridge. You don't necessarily need to have a perfect thoracic bridge on the ground, but you should definitely have a very comfortable elevated thoracic bridge with your feet elevated to at least your hips or lower. And in this position, you should not have lower back discomfort. You should feel comfortable, or as comfortable as you can in such a position, but you should feel that you are able to control which part of the spine you're opening up, and you should also be able to look comfortably into the ground. Now, if you're still lacking a bit of this thoracic mobility, I do recommend you take a look at my thoracic bridge tutorial, which I will also link in the description, which will take care of all the basics when it comes to starting your back bending journey, so to say, and developing good thoracic mobility and awareness, and learning to do the thoracic bridge. Now that we got that out of the way, let's continue on how we can approach the Hollowback. I like approaching this skill from 3 different directions, namely strength, balance or technique, and mobility. So we work it from 3 different directions, and we sort of merge it all together into the skill that we want to achieve. So let's start with the balancing part, or the technical part. Now, using wall-assisted drills is the way to go here. Starting with a one-leg half-lay variation, where you are using the wall as much as you need, but trying to really focus on creating balance here and learning to balance the position. Make note of the angle of the arms as you lean backwards and put weight on the back side of your palm. So your arm will actually be angled from the floor, as opposed to a handstand where it's supposed to be 90 degrees on the floor. So as you're leaning backwards, opening your chest, it's important to elevate your shoulders, open your thoracic spine and tighten the glute of the extended hip. Now in this one-leg half-lay variation, you use the toe of the tucked leg to provide assistance from the wall, but only use it as much as you need, and try to just sort of dab into the wall and mostly balance the position. Now next up would be the one-leg variation, and the exact same principles as in the previous progressions apply, only this time you're using the toe of the extended leg to give assistance from the wall. Again, try and only slightly use the toe and use it as little as possible, and really try to focus on creating balance here. Now the next progression would be the small straddle variation, and while the same principles as the previous progressions apply, try also to tighten both glutes here, since both hips are extended, so that we get to brace our lower back and protect it against injuries. Now in this case, you're also using both toes to get assistance from the wall, and again try to focus on getting your toes away from the wall and really trying to balance the position. Now you can feel free to also move further on to the closed leg variation, or you can just keep doing the small straddle variation. I personally think that this looks as cool, and it is definitely less stressful on your shoulders and your back. Now next up is the strength approach, but these drills are also very technical and also provides a very good way of practicing the entry to Hollowback. So the whole point here is entering a wall-supported Hollowback position, or a wall-supported bridge basically, from a handstand as slowly and controlledly as possible, going back up to a controlled handstand, and doing this for repetitions. So we start with our hands fairly close to the wall so that we don't get as deep of a Hollowback, and as we get more comfortable we move further away from the wall until we basically have wall-supported Hollowback position. And from here we really want to develop this nice and controlled entry into the wall-supported Hollowback, as well as going back up to a stable handstand, trying not to fall rapidly in any of the directions. I recommend using the small straddle throughout all of these strength focusing drills. Now, as we get comfortable with this, we can eventually move on to doing this freestanding. So basically going from a handstand slowly and controlled into a Hollowback and back up again to a handstand, and do this for repetitions to really emphasize the control and the strength and the awareness needed in this position. Now you can also move further by going deeper, and you can lower yourself into sort of an elevated thoracic bridge and chair or a platform to do this. And as you get more comfortable, you can go lower and lower and lower, and eventually do a thoracic bridge press to handstand, which would be the ideal goal. I am not at this level myself yet, but it is one of my long-term goals as well. Now, the mobility approach would be to practice your thoracic bridge on the side of doing these technical and strength drills. Now, the approach would basically be the same as developing a thoracic bridge and getting it deeper and nicer and with straighter legs eventually. So feel free to check out the thoracic bridge tutorial that I have, and that will be linked in the description. I also have a follow-along workout for developing the thoracic bridge, so you can check that out. So I will not go further into the topic of this kind of passive mobility work for the thoracic bridge, as I already have tutorials for this. Now, in my newly launched app, I also have workouts for the thoracic bridge or for upper body mobility if you're still not at the level where you are comfortable training for the bridge. And I also just now released a Hollowback workout or a Hollowback module that you can follow to get stepwise progressions and follow a structured routine in order to develop your Hollowback. And the app has a free trial period, so you can check it out and see if you like it before you pay anything. So I will link the app down in the description in case you want to check that out. Now, that was basically what I had today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, hit me up with a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content. See you guys next time.